Hey everybody, this is Keeping It Real with Phil here in the boat port. Wanting to do a video here on rod selection, the size rods that I use for certain applications, the power that I use for certain applications. Mostly be on bait casting on this video. So you know what bait casters do I use, and for the beginner, also you know, for the size of person, what kind of rod do you need? So to start off with, I think it's very important that you know, you also need to know the species of fish that that you're fishing for to know what kind of rod to select. Here we're going to be primarily focusing on bass. So you know, what is the most common bass rod you know, in America that most people buy for their fishing application? By far, it would have to be a 7-foot medium heavy. Like this Kistler right here, KLX 7-foot medium heavy. It's a good all-around rod. The length is good for smaller people up to taller people. It's good for different applications such as you know, worm fishing on the bottom. I would say anywhere from an 1/8 ounce all the way up to maybe 1/2 ounce, or even at times maybe a 3/4, but I would definitely say up to a 1/2 ounce, or just in between a 1/2 ounce and a 3/4 ounce. What are some of the applications I would use a 7-foot medium heavy for? I like it for Texas rig worming. I like it for when I'm fishing open water for on spinner baits, or maybe open water with bigger swim baits. You know, when I say bigger swim baits, in the 5-inch you know, category and down. And then also I like to use it maybe even in the grass when I need to rip that bait a little bit more out of the grass. I might use a 7-foot medium heavy. So it's a good all-around rod for throwing different baits, and it's a good starter rod for those of you that are just getting into bass fishing. And also I'll just point out, you know, the speed of the reel, or the ratio, the gear ratio that you need on reels, has to depend a lot on the you know, on the application that you're using for. So if I'm wanting to take up line really quick, you know, say I'm fishing it on the bottom and you know, I'm hopping it with a you know, a tight line or slightly tight line, and I want to take that line up really quick, then I probably want to go with the 7 gear ratio, 7-to-1 gear ratio, all the way up to maybe an 8-to-1 gear ratio. So but if you're fishing maybe you know, for, you can even throw some square bills on a medium heavy. I like to go with a little lighter, maybe something like a 7-foot medium or 7-foot light medium heavy, you know, and maybe a power you know, 4 or power 3. Then I might throw a square bill on this, but I would probably want to go down to a lower gear ratio, maybe like a 6-to-1. So you know, this happens to be the chromium 7, I think it's an 8-to-1 gear ratio that I have on this one right here. So I do use this a lot for my Texas rig worms, this particular rod right here. So when would I go, you know, a shorter rod, to when would I go a longer rod? Well, it also has to depend on the size of the bait or the weight of the bait that I'm using. So if I'm using a heavier bait, then I tend to like to go a little bit longer rod than a 7-foot. For instance, this rod right here, you'll notice that that I do have a Texas rig on it, and it's a 7.3 medium heavy. I believe that's what it is. It's a power 4, and yeah, it's a 7.3 medium heavy. So if I'm fishing maybe a 1/2 ounce to even a 3/4 ounce swing head or something like that, I'm probably going to use this 7.3 medium heavy, and you know, fishing it on the bottom. So you know, when would I maybe use this on a running bait? You know, like I say, maybe a swing head, 3/4 ounce, or even I like a 7.3 you know, 4 power sometime when I'm fishing like clay banks or something like that, for, you know, football jigs. And so I like that little 3 inches longer to help me get a better hook set. When I might want to go even heavier, I mean longer than that, would be like a 7.6. I don't have one right here in the boat right now, But a 7/6 heavy flipping stick would be something, if I'm throwing a 3/4 ounce or 1 ounce and I'm throwing that and punching the grass, or I'm, even if I'm, flipping up into the bushes, where it's a little bit deeper water, I probably use that 7/3 to a 7/6. So, also what's important about the length of the rod is control. So, and the power. So, I talked about powers a little bit. A medium heavy is about a 4-power rod. A heavy rod would be considered maybe a 5-power rod, and an extra heavy would be considered maybe a 6-power rod. So something like a light, medium, heavy might be like a 4 to 3.5, and a light or medium rod would be, a 3 to a 2.5. If you go to Kistler and go to their website, you can see all their rods and the powers that they have. So, when would I use a lighter application for my rods, like the lighter power? This, for instance, right here is their 7-foot. It's a light, medium, heavy. So, this rod right here, 7-foot light, medium, heavy, I like to use it for my shaky head applications. It's perfect for that. And that's when I'm fishing, obviously a shaky head, you're fishing either clay banks or you're fishing around maybe some sparse cover. So I like this. It's a little bit better filled, the 7-foot. So I'll tell you something else about the length of the rod. The shorter the rod, to me, and this is just my own personal opinion, allows me to detect the bite better. So if I've got a heavier, longer rod, I'm not going to feel that bite, especially a light bite, as good as I would a shorter and a shorter rod. So that shorter rod on a tight line, to me, I have a little bit better feel, and that's why I like to throw a 7-foot for my Texas rig, or a 7-foot medium heavy for my Texas rig worms, or like a 7-foot light medium heavy for my shaky heads. And this one happens to be the Helium 7-foot light medium heavy. I love this rod for this application. I'm throwing it on a 7/3 to 1 bait caster, and typically my line size on something like this, or I try to get away with as light a line as I can, but I still want that strength. So the heavier cover, I'm going to go with a heavier line. So this happens to be a 15-pound 15-pound fluorocarbon right here, and there's only really one time that I use monofilament, and that's sometimes on top water. This rod also throws top water really well, but I like to use a monofilament or braid whenever I'm throwing top water. So this particular rod right here, I usually use it for either wacky worm applications or shaky head, and that's a light, medium, heavy Helium 7-foot. So another rod, when I would go heavier or longer, but maybe not as heavy as a medium heavy, and I love this rod right here for my top water, my heavier top waters. This is actually a 7/3 light, medium, heavy, and it's also a Helium. And this rod right here throws that whopper plopper perfectly, and it heavier, like walking baits and stuff like that. Now on walking baits, I do like to go down to a 7-foot because it allows me, I'm about almost 6 foot tall, but it allows me to walk that bait with my rod tip down without hitting the water. So I typically use a 7-foot light, medium, heavy, or medium application for for when I'm walking the dog or something like that. Also, when I would use maybe like a 7/3 is when I'm throwing a jig. So I like the 7/3 KLX right here, and this is the 7/3 heavy right here, and I like it when I'm throwing a football jig, or I'm flipping the bushes, or even when I'm casting far with like I say a football jig or something like that. This happens to be the Queen Tackle 1/2 ounce football jig right here, peanut butter jelly, paired with the crawl worm from you know, from Exxon. So love this rod for this application. It's really, really good. And you know, I can detect the bite pretty good on this, even though it's a little longer rod. It has really good feel on the 7.3 and when I'm using the heavier type jigs. So I really like that. And it even works good when you're using down to a 3/8 ounce jig. So really like that application there. And then there are times like when I'm fishing and I really need to feel that bite. And you can see this right here, and I'll show y'all a little trick in your boat to handle these things, these rod sleeves. And there, you know how much of a pain in the rear it is sometimes when you're pulling rods out of your rod locker and you got to do something with these. Well, maybe you can see over here in my rod locker lid, I have a place to put my sleeves. And what it is, and I'll show you a picture of it later, is these are like shower curtain hangers. And so, you know, I didn't want to drill holes in my rod locker deal right there. It's not metal, so I can't get a magnet. So I come up with these shower curtain hangers, and I just clip it right there on the end. And so when I pull a rod out, I'm able to slide it through there, take this rod sleeve off, slide it through there, and they're out of the way. So it's a nice little trick for you if you don't want to put holes in your rod lid, or it ain't metal and you can't put a magnet. So good little tip right there. But so when would I use a shorter rod, shorter than 7 foot? Well, I like this. This is a Kistler, you know, 6.9, and it's basically medium heavy. And I like to use it also when I'm fishing kind of close quarters, you know, but it's sparse cover. But say I'm casting, you know, shorter distances to say stumps or, you know, little ledges or whatever with a Texas rig, whether it's a brush hog or whether it's, you know, a Texas rig worm or what have you. I like a shorter rod because, like I say, I feel like I can feel that kick whenever that fish hits it a little bit better on a shorter rod. And also, if I'm throwing up underneath bushes with a spinner bait, you know, then I like to use a shorter rod. I'll go with like a 6.9 rod. So 6.9 is about as short as I'll go. There are times that I have seen where, you know, like a 6.6, you know, is good for that application also, a 6.6 to a 6.9. And I do have a couple of 6.6s that I use for Texas rigging, especially if I'm using a light sinker, you know, so more or less a 1/8 ounce to 3/16 ounce to, you know, even 1/4 ounce. I'll go with the shorter rod. So that's a little short video on bait casting rods. I'll do something on spinning rods later. It's a whole nother category, but also I want to give another tip for you beginners out there using a bait caster reel. And if you're trying to teach your kid also to throw a bait caster reel, if you'll take some electrical tape and just cut it about 1 inch, and make a long cast and put that tape on your spool of line, then reel it in and let your kid practice with that, and he won't bird nest that spool. So hey, that's just a little tip to save you some money and you know, save your pocketbook and put a few more fish in the live well. This is Keeping It Real with Phil. Please subscribe so that you can get my next tips, and hopefully we'll get on the water and show you some of the stuff that I do. All right, thanks. See you next time. God bless.